All right, Robin, this is David. Just want to give you a quick video. I did a video last night, but I didn't want to send that to you. It didn't have a whole lot of energy. Plus, it was a very long video. I'm going to try and make this a lot shorter. I'm going to go through all 31 of these symptoms, but just understand that it's not me saying that this is what you need to say. This is more so giving you examples of the different, some of the different symptoms that come with mental health and giving you an understanding of how those things could possibly fit into your life. So like as I'm going through this, go ahead and take notes. This is kind of the same as if we were on the Zoom. I wouldn't want your camera on. I would kind of want you to be taking notes in the background, and you can ask questions. So if you do have questions, by all means, go ahead and let me know, and we'll go in from there, and what we can talk. All right. So so before I even get started, I want to show you this. This is 31 symptoms of mental health. This is going from one being considered one of the least all the way down to 31, which is going to be some of the more severe. Right. So this will give you a little bit more understanding. This is coming from LHI. LHI is one of the contracted medical companies with the VA, along with QTC and VES. The LHI is coming from their website. So it hasn't changed much over the years. But when you look at this, this is completely what the VA goes off of when it comes to your rating. So when you look at these different things, I'm not saying that if you have anything in one color that it's going to mean that you definitely have that percentage. But when you look at this, the green would be considered in the 0 to maybe 30%. The blue is going to be considered the 50% range. The yellow is going to be considered the 70% range, and the red is going to be considered in the 100% range. Right. So anything that when you're dealing with the VA, it's going to be a balancing act. Right. So if you have 7 things in the, let's say, the blue section, or the 50% range, and then you have one thing in the red, they're not going to just say, okay, well, we're going to give you red because you have this one symptom that's up here. Like, no, they're more so talking about, what is the weight of this. Most of your symptoms are falling in this section, so that's likely where they're going to rate you, right? And then also the main thing is occupational and social impairment. Yes, they care that you have these symptoms, but just like any other condition, you can have a symptom of something, but if it doesn't affect you in your day-to-day living, then it's not an impairment per se. Right. And this is just my understanding and my interpretation of things. It's not an impairment. So when you're looking for VA disability ratings, they're looking at how does this thing affect you occupationally and socially. Okay. So, and as you look at this, when you look at, let's say, the green section, it says mental condition has been formally diagnosed, but symptoms are not severe. Right? It's cut and dry. Occupational social impairment due to mild and transient symptoms, which decrease work efficiency. Right? It's still very mild. Then you start jumping into the occupational social impairment and with decrease in work efficiency. Occupational social impairment reduce reliability. Occupational social impairment with deficiencies in most areas. And then total occupational social impairment. So total 100%, most 70%, reduced reliability and productivity 50%, occupational social impairment decrease in work efficiencies in intermittent periods, so about 30%. Right. So where veterans normally fall are between the 30 and 70% range. And we'll get into these colors and stuff a little bit later. Right. So I don't want to hold anything else up. So let me jump into this. All right. So like I said, even though depressed mood is pretty much what you're looking at, mental health is, people look at it as depression. They look at it as, okay, I have this going on, so I'm depressed. Well, there's different things that depression brings on, that mental health brings on, and that's going to be the feeling of being or having a depressive mood. That's going to be the loss of interest in things, it's trouble sleeping, loss of energy. Those are all the common things. People that experience these different things, it's normal for them to explain that. Okay, I can't sleep at night. I don't have the interest that I used to have in different things, right? So that is normal, right? And it's also, along that first level of mental health conditions. That's where you're going to fall into the um, likely the green section, where it's in the 0 to 30% range, right? The main thing is, even when you're talking about this thing, even if this is the Achilles, the thing that's going on, how is this affecting you on the job? How is this affecting you with your family, right? And how does it stop you from being able to do things that you used to be able to do, right? So difficulty thinking, concentrating, those are all kind of baseline mental health conditions, right? Same thing with anxiety, feeling nervous, sweating, trembling, feeling weak or tired, different things like that, not wanting to get up, or just not being able to focus so much because you're all over the place, because of anxiety, your fear of something, whatever's going on. Again, this is in the lower area, but even though it's in the lower area, how does it affect you on the work, with work? How does it affect you with your family, with friends? And the reason I'm skipping through these so fast is because typically these are the ones that we're able to explain. We're able to explain how anxiety, stresses us out, or how we're affecting other people with our anxiety or our depression or different things like that. We're able to express that. So that's where we normally are comfortable explaining different things. So when it comes to it, I don't want you I want you to, if this is where your symptoms begin and end, that's what I want you to spend time on, and I want you to be able to explain that. But if this is the beginning of your symptoms and you also fall in those higher ranges that I'm going to get into in a little bit, I want you to spend more time on the higher ranges than you're doing on the lower ranges. Reason for that is because if I give you 10 minutes to talk, and you take 10 minutes to talk about how much anxiety you have and your depression, and your inability to sleep and stuff like that. And then on the last 2 minutes, you're like, oh yeah, well, I do have severe memory loss, and I do have some disorientation in place and time. And you could talk a lot about those things, but you just spent 8 minutes talking about the lower, more comfortable symptoms, right? So the outcome of this, or the end goal that I want you to have for this, is for you to be uncomfortably vulnerable, right? Uncomfortably vulnerable. That means that ultimately, as veterans, we tend to not share our issues. We tend to not share the things that are actually going on the inside of us. For whatever reason, we've learned that in the military. One, we didn't go to the doctor. Two, if we do have any issues, we normally don't share them as much as other people share their stuff. So in reality, when it comes down to this, and you're talking to this individual about mental health, it's normally comes down to you're not going to tell them everything. You're not going to tell them everything that you're dealing with in your symptoms stuff, and stuff like that. So I want you to get to the point to where you're uncomfortably vulnerable. Tell your story. Talk to your story with your spouse. Let them interject, and be open to understanding, or getting an understanding of what they're saying, because we don't see everything. So I'm gonna not beat that dead horse. All right. So anxiety, depression, suspiciousness, believing that others have hidden motives or are out to harm you, doubting the loyalty of others, being hypersensitive to criticism, being quick to become angry, become detached and social isolated, being argumentative and defensive, having trouble seeing their own problems, having trouble relaxing, right? So I can give you example after example, of those different things, but I don't know that I need to, right? So a lot of us go through these different things, And that's normally where it begins, suspiciousness, anger issues, lashing out at a loved one, lashing out at the people that are around us, that are closest to us, isolating ourselves from other people, or not being able to feel based what other people are feeling because of the other stuff that we're dealing with, right? So the key is really and truly to start developing your own story, and that is the baseline story, right? Who are you when it comes to depression, anxiety, and suspiciousness? Panic attacks, panic attacks is more of a physical type thing also, right? So you can go into a panic attack and be trembling or sweating or feeling or choking, whatever the chest pain, whatever the situation is. You can have those situations, and a lot of people do. What you want to understand when it comes to the panic attacks is how often do you have them, and how debilitating are they, if you do have them, right? I've talked to some people and they're like, hey, I have panic attacks on average probably 2-3 times a week, right? Well, you need to be able to talk to the doctor that situation, when you're talking to them. We talked about some of these different things, and they're real. They're really real, especially in your own situations. That when you're thinking about these things, like when we're talking about the fear of dying or the fear of losing control, whatever the situation is, you want to be able to explain that to the doctor, like, hey, this is where this is falling. This is what's going on with me. But not only that, this is what's going on with me. This is how it's affecting me, with my family. This is how it's affecting me or my relationship with the people that I love. Right. So let's go on. This is talking about the symptoms when it comes to the panic attack. This is talking about the how many times a week type thing, and that you're experiencing these different things, or a day, that you're experiencing these different things. Obviously, the more times you're having them, the more debilitating it is, because it's stopping you from being able to do other things. All right. So near continuous panic and depression, right? So obviously, if this is we've had anxiety issues, we've had depression issues, we've had panic attacks, possibly, now a lot of times when we have these things, we'll have them and then we'll come out of it. Like, all right, we'll go to a closer state to normalcy, that we remember. And then all of a sudden we go back into it. Well, some people deal with this thing and it's almost on a constant basis. It's a constant feeling of depression. It's a constant panic or worry or anxiety and different things like that. And if that's your situation, you want to be able to explain that, right? So chronic sleep impairment, it's insomnia. One, you do want to talk to your doctor about something like that. If you're not able to sleep at night, if you're not you're getting 3 to 4 hours of sleep, and you feel it throughout the day. So really and truly, like when I'm talking about these different things, there is nothing that the doctor's going to say that's going to point to all of these questions at the same time. They're not going to ask you 31 questions. They're going to ask you some questions, right? And when you're telling your situation, you're telling your story, you're summarizing your situation. You don't want to just say, okay, well, I have chronic sleep impairment. Well, my example would be, I have chronic sleep impairment, or I have trouble sleeping to the point to where I don't get more than 3 hours of sleep a night. And the way that's affecting me is that I'm extra angry in the morning. I'm irritable. I can't get my job done because I can't stay awake. I'm constantly falling asleep on my way to work because of the lack of sleep that I'm getting. I'm having these panic attacks. I can't remember things because of the lack of sleep, all these different things that are so now I've explained multiple symptoms that are going to fall in different numbers, that I'm showing you, but I've explained it all in one type of question, right? So just keep that in mind as you're looking through these things. And like I said, we're going to hit this again on Monday when I get back, so that you have a fresh start going into your appointment, right? So memory loss. So there's different levels of memory loss. You got mild memory loss, which is just you forgetting things that maybe a direction or something of someone told you, names of people, maybe a neighbor or something like that. You constantly have to ask them what their name is. That's also going to be on that lighter side of things. And then you start getting to the short and the long term. You're forgetting, let me see, highly learned material includes repetitive tasks you perform your entire life. You remember how to brush your teeth, get dressed in the morning, go to the bathroom, drive a car, count by fives, recite the alphabet, etc. You're likely very forgetful of new things. However, for example, you read the paper this morning and you can't remember any of the news stories, right? Your spouse tells you to clean the house and you'll forget unless you write it down, right? It's things like that where you're needing to keep a journal almost to keep you on task. That's where I fall in a lot of these different things. I have to write things down almost on a constant basis, which I don't write very well because I also got dyslexia and stuff like that. So me trying to write things down and stay on task and try and understand what I wrote, it takes practice, we'll say, right? So a lot of these different examples I'm giving you are going to be me interjecting myself because I have gone through this process. I am rated for mental health PTSD at 70%, but I did not recognize a lot of these things when I was dealing with them throughout my life, throughout my marriage, throughout a lot of these different things. So that's why I interject myself a lot, because it took me a while to understand them. And I think sometimes when I explain it to other people of what I went through, it helps them understand how it actually does fit into their life or doesn't fit into their life, right? Because some of these things you're going to look at and be like, no, that's not me. You're supposed to look at it and be like, no, that's not you. And that's fine. So I don't want you to say anything that you're not supposed to say. I don't want you to try and make a symptom up or anything like that. You're only going to live where you live, right? So we went from mild to short and long term to severe memory loss. That's going to be forgetting things that are, people that are really close to you in your family, like people you grew up with, aunties, uncles, or whatever that you lived next door to or you lived with your entire life, and now you forgot their name. Cousins, different things like that. So a lot of that's self-explanatory, but you need to look through that and figure out where you stand in it. Flatten effect, that's really someone tells you something that should be really exciting or whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, that's great. You don't really have those highs and lows. You have a flat response to different things that should be excitable, right? And this is not really something that you need to explain. This would be something that someone else would be explaining. So like I went to the doctor and I talked to him about all of my different symptoms. I talked to him about my time in the military, my family, different things like that. And the doctor came back and was like, oh, he has a flattened effect, right? Because they're watching us when we go through these appointments. They're trying to figure out, okay, how do I respond to this situation? You're not going to go in there necessarily and be like, oh yeah, doc, I have a flattened effect. No, that's not the situation. The doc's going to be like, okay, based off of your answers to different questions and how you ask them or answer them, that's how your response. And that's not always the situation. That's not really one of those things where he can figure out how that's affecting you on the job and socially and different things like that, unless it's your spouse writing that circumstance. All right, so circumstantial, circulatory or stereotype speech, right? So these are all different types of ways of speaking. And it's normally dealing with someone that is, to an extent impaired, impaired in their mind. It's almost like if a person was drinking and they're drunk and now that alcohol is affecting their mind to the point that they can't get out clear sentences. They can't rationalize what they're actually saying, right? That's my best way of explaining these different situations. And there's different tiers of it, like as you can see. But it's not necessarily in this situation, it's not alcohol, it's something else. It's a mental health issue that's going on. It's some damage that's going on that's causing you not to be able to um, communicate effectively in different ways. So, all right, that's kind of going into the same direction. Um, So, like this is an example. When asked what is your favorite color, a normal person would answer, or a person that's answering in their coherent mind would say blue, or whatever their favorite color is, or my favorite color is blue. Maybe you would start your answer with, I can't believe how dang busy the roads were today. I'm so sick and tired of having to drive to traffic. Right. So instead of you answering the actual question, and staying on track, you start down another path. Right. So complex commands and difficulty understanding them. Right. So sometimes in our minds, we get to a point to where we cannot rationalize what's been told to us. For me, if someone asked me to do something and I have other things that are going on, I cannot process multiple things at the same time. I wasn't able to, I was getting to the point to where I couldn't process multiple things at the same time. I wasn't able to go to work and know that I have 10 tasks to do and be able to get 9 of them done. It was more so I got one of them done and was more depressed that I couldn't get the other 9. So, and then on top of that, if you add something to that task, all it did would add to my anxiety. Um, so it's just, again, this is me just saying something about some of my symptoms, right? Impaired judgment, self-explanatory. You're just buying things that cost $5,000 and you have $6,000 worth of bills, and it's the second of the month and you don't get paid until the end of the month, whatever the situation is, right? Impaired abstract thinking, gross impairment in thought, process, communication, disturbance in mood and motivation, difficulty establishing and maintaining effective work relationships. So now, see, this is where we're getting into, okay, more so of how these things could affect us on the job. All right. So how could something, if I'm having gross impairment of thought and being able to communicate, how could that possibly affect me on the job? I won't be able to get along with anybody. I won't be able to complete a task, and that's kind of what I'm getting paid to do. Um, I couldn't communicate to someone else if I was a management position, and now I'm trying to convey what I need to be done to my subordinates or whatever the situation is. There's no possible way for me to accomplish that. So now that keeps me in a lower state to where I can't supervise anybody, and then I'm also not getting the job done. So obviously that would affect you. Disturbance in mood and motivation. Again, a form of depression and just being in a down state. And I talked to you about levels of these different things and how, yes, it could be something that's going on 1 minute, and then the next minute you're fine. Then again, it's going on the next minute, and you're fine. Well, imagine it going on for every minute, and for every minute of that day, you're struggling, to motivate yourself to take the next step. That is a huge form of depression, and that's another whole nother level. All right. Difficulty establishing and maintaining effective work relationships, arguing with people that you work with, difficulty adapting to stressful situations, which we talked about a little bit, giving complex tasks and not being able to fill them out, right? So these are, like I said before, these are things that are going into that higher level. Some of them are kind of redundant. So this one right here is it's serious, obviously. So suicidal ideation, sometimes it doesn't mean that you're okay. I'm going to go hurt myself and that I'm going to end it all. Sometimes it means that there's a thought that comes into your mind. It's a nagging thought that keeps popping up. What happens if I'm not here? What if I wasn't here? How would the rest of this thing go on? And it's something that pops up. First thing I will say is that that's something that you got to get checked. You need to make sure that you're talking to somebody that's going to help you in that situation, and that can you can legitly go to them and be like, hey, this is the thought that I've been having and I need you to help me. Or you need to get on that suicide hotline type thing and let someone else talk you through that process. But it's serious. One of the questions that they will ask you in the meeting is, about suicidal ideation. So you want to be at a point to where you're honest. If you thought about it, you need to be able to explain it to them. The next question they're going to ask you is, do you have a plan? And that doesn't matter if it's the VA hospital that you're going to just for a meeting or a checkup, or if you're talking to a C&P examiner. That's the next question. Do you have a plan? Because they need to know if you need help right this very second, and for them to call somebody to get you that help, right? And if that's the case, you need to let them know, right? This is the number for that, to make sure that you're taken care of. All right, and I'm going through these a little fast, but these are all on the higher end of things. Obsessional rituals. So for me, it was something of me needing to get up and check the door locks every night. Or so that doesn't seem like a big deal. Most people in the house will go and check the door locks and stuff like that. For me, it was one of those things to where I had to make sure that everybody in the house was asleep. That's the only time I could really check the locks and be comfortable. Make sure everything was closed up. I had to make sure that, so if I'm waiting for everyone to go to sleep, for me to check the locks and make sure everything's locked up and everyone's safe, then that means that if they go to bed at 12 o'clock, I'm not going to bed until at least 12:30, right? If they're going to bed at 1 o'clock, I'm going to sleep at 1:30. It doesn't change what time I need to get up and go to work, so that was how it was affecting me. It was affecting me in the sense that it didn't matter what time it was. I was getting up and I was checking stuff. I was making sure I was the last one to sleep. I was making sure so that I could make sure that everything was good to go, which in turn meant that I was getting less sleep than I needed to. And this is if I fell asleep in the first place. So how does that affect me on the job? Well, I'm going to be extremely tired when I get to work. I'm not going to be able to focus on things. I'm not going to be able to handle complex tasks. I'm not going to be able to get along with my coworkers, and so on and so on and so on. So, like I said before, when you're talking about these things, how does it affect you here, 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 and here, all the way down the road? Not just the one answer, one word answer. You need to be able to explain, for your own situation. This is again going to impulse control. I'm trying to get to. All right, so as we already see, persistent delusional hallucination, that's serious. If you're seeing things that aren't there, if you're constantly seeing something out the corner of your eye, and it's got you feeling like there's something there, that can get to a point to where you need to talk to somebody. Gross impairment of behavior, right? So this is an important one because this is something that's specific to each individual, right? So for one individual, something that's grossly inappropriate is not necessarily grossly inappropriate for another individual. If it's something that you were doing prior to your injury or prior to your stressful situation or whatever, however it is that you came to the mental health conclusion, then it's not necessarily grossly inappropriate. It's just something you've been doing, right? So for some individuals, it's, how you're responding to certain things now, as opposed to how you responded to things before. If you, let's say that, there's lots of different things, but road rage, how do you respond to someone that cuts you off? A lot of people get upset and honk their horn at them or whatever. The next level would probably be to lay on your horn and be like, for 5 seconds, so they know that you're upset with them, all stuff like that, and don't care what their response is. Another one would be to flick them off and to curse them out and all that stuff like that, and or to tailgate them. And the final one, which would be the most extreme and outlandish, would be to follow them to the house and want to meet them on their doorstep because they cut you off in your car, right? So, it's different levels. There's different levels of inappropriate. There's different levels of um, um, that different individuals deal with. So persistent danger of hurting self and others. That one is important because now, obviously, if you're a danger of hurting self and others, one, if you're in danger of hurting other people, they don't want to be around you. They don't want to communicate with you because you're in a position where you're going to lash out, and they know it. They know you have anger issues. They're walking on eggshells. People don't like to walk on eggshells. So they try to separate themselves, or they know when to walk away because of whatever's happened. But more importantly, that's a differentiation between who you were and who you are now, right? It's not saying that this is you're just that person, but now, because of whatever the imbalance is going on, now that something is going on, and this is how it's affecting your relationships around you, right? All right, so this will be the last one, I think. Neglect of personal appearance and hygiene. So when it comes to cleaning the house, when it comes to showering, when it comes to different things, where you get to the point to where um, because you don't see the purpose, you stop taking care of yourself the way you used to take care of yourself. Those are all symptoms of mental health issues or depression or PTSD or whatever the situation is, somatic symptom disorder, whatever it is. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but those are all symptoms. If you find yourself in that place and people have to remind you to, hey, did you brush your teeth today? Did you put on deodorant? You haven't showered in 2 days. You're wearing the same thing you wore yesterday. These different things that come up, you want to be able to explain, what your situation is. And like I said before, this is all about being uncomfortably vulnerable, right? If you have a situation to where, yeah, it might be uncomfortable, but you need to be vulnerable, right? You need to let someone know about that situation. At the very least, you need to let this doctor know about the situation that's going on, so that you, one, are rated accordingly, but then two, you get to the point to where you're expressing truly what's going on with you. So the other two are intermittent inability to perform activities of daily living. That goes along with neglect of personal hygiene, goes along with not brushing teeth, goes along with not being able to pay your own bills, letting things go, not taking care of house, whatever the situation is, disorientation, place and time. You find yourself hallucinating, delusions, delirium, confusion, wandering aimlessly. So disorientation, place and time. This is, based off of this list anyway. This is not an all-inclusive list, but this is going to be on the higher end of this of everything. Like I told you before, this other thing right here, like I said in red, this is the last thing on the list. Disorientation of place and time. Intermittent inability to perform activities of daily living, not being able to take care of finances, grossly inappropriate behavior, wanting to beat people down because they cut you off, persistent danger of hurting self, not being able to communicate with others, or lashing out at others, or wanting to hurt other people because they said something mean to you, or whatever the situation is. These are all in the 100% range. Grossly inappropriate thought process and communication, 100% range. Memory loss of names, close relatives. That's huge. Yeah, it's one thing to forget things, but it's another thing to be able to not be able to remember names. or even your own name. That's huge, right? 100% range, 70%, 50%, 30 to 0%, right? So as you're looking through this, by all means, just continue to ask yourself, does this fit with me? If it does not, do not focus on it and just move on to the next one. If you have any questions about any of these things, by all means, let me know and we'll walk through it. We're going to walk through it anyway on Monday. If you have any questions between now and then, I'll still have my phone. Give me a call and we'll walk through it. All right. I will talk to you soon.